This podcast is brought to you by Most Valuable Podcasts, leading the league in podcasting entertainment.
What's up, real MVPs? Ricky Widmer here, along with the Mark Weber.
What's up, Emmys?
And we are back for another edition of the Onside Kick right here on Most Valuable Podcast, where we talk about, Mark, the best and the biggest news in the NFL. We're kind of continuing our, I think as of right now, we're officially halfway through our season previews.
Yeah.
I think we have two divisions
entered the
down.
second half.
We have the East and the North completely finished. You guys can go and check that out. We're going to start the South today, then do the West in about 2 weeks.
Yeah,
right?
that's how it works.
This week, next week, and then we'll start the West. But in this one, we got a special topic to start you off. However, before we get to that, I got a little bit of housekeeping at the beginning of this podcast. First off, if you want to help support MVP more so than you already do by liking, subscribing, watching, go check out patreon.com/mostvaluablepodcast. If you join the $10 tier, you get to join a podcast each and every month and talk about what you would like to talk about with us on any of the podcasts for MVP. Also, go check that store link down below in the description. You can also get it at mostvaluablepodcast.com to get yourself. I'm not wearing it today, but I always do like the shirt show.
Well, you're demonstrating what a shirt would be.
Yeah, what a shirt. The logo.
This is a
right
T-shirt.
Here.
It's not an MVP T-shirt. It's a T-shirt.
For my
so you know.
For my audio listeners, it's right in the middle of the chest. I always just put up the logo when I wear it, but you can get that down below in the description or at mostvaluablepodcast.com, where you can also catch MVP each and every day. And then last but not least, if you have Apple Podcasts, you have iTunes, make sure to go over and give the Onside Kick a 5-star rating and let us know why you like listening to the podcast each and every week. But Mark, we're going to start before we get into the AFC South. We're going to take the AFC South. We're going to push it over to the side of the table. We're going to keep it over here.
Yep.
It's going to be on simmer on our stove because we got a news story that we got to get into before we get into the AFC South, and that is the Le'Veon Bell. I'm calling it a saga. The Le'Veon Bell saga. We've talked about this before. What's going to happen? Is he going to get a long-term extension with the Steelers? Is he going to stay with the Steelers? Well, the deadline for a long-term deal has now passed. It was Monday of this week. Now Le'Veon Bell does not have a long-term deal. It is likely, from his agent, that 2018 will be his last year as a Pittsburgh Steeler. I'm going to ask you, Mark, right out of the gate, and this might be a little extreme, but I'm going to ask it anyways. Will Le'Veon Bell ever play for the Steelers again?
I don't think it's an extreme question, and don't yell at me in the comment section just yet.
I say extreme because I'm assuming he's going to play at some point this year.
I would assume so too, but what I've said all offseason is that Le'Veon Bell himself said he will not play without a long-term contract.
He won't play under the tender.
So what that essentially means is that he's either telling the truth or he's lying in that case, and sure, whatever, there's gray area in between. But if you want to really, really believe what Le'Veon Bell said, that he will not play without an actual deal, then yes, he's done with the Steelers. Because what we're assuming is that he's gone after this year, right? Now, realistically, he's not that dumb. He's not going to sit out an entire year at 27 years old, when running backs make it to 30. So he's got, 2 years left, and then he sat out a whole year. He loses the bargaining chip. I like what Adam Schefter said, that there's a real chance that he might play only half the season because he doesn't want to put that work on him. If I'm the Steelers and I'm thinking that this guy's done next year, you know what I'm going to do? Run him every single opportunity. I'm not letting him sit because I don't care. I don't care if he takes beatings because he's not back next year. I'm not worried about his long-term use for the team. And I know that's very cold, but that's the way an NFL team is going to look at it.
Well, and that's why, for me, I'm going to throw this out there. This is a thought I had. It's not going to happen. I'm just going to say that right now. It is not going to happen. If we were talking NBA, it would totally happen, but we just don't see this very often in the NFL. If you're the Steelers, let's say it does get to that hypothetically, where Le'Veon Bell's like, you know what, screw it. I'm not going to play the first half of the year, which basically, if he went half of the games, their first 8 games, he's coming back week 10 because they're bye is week 7. Or if he only wants to sit out 6, I'll sit out the first 6 games. I'll come back week 8 against Cleveland. That's kind of what you can think about if he's going towards that maybe halfway through the season. My question that I had in my head after Le'Veon was like, hey, we ain't getting a deal done, there's no long-term deal. If you know right away, if the agent comes out and says 2018 is most likely his last, if you're the Steelers, should you be thinking, hey, you know what? If it gets towards the trade deadline or even before the trade deadline, because it's a tricky situation of, yes, he can help you win this year, but do you kind of do an NBA model of things that we always see where a team goes, hey, we're going to lose this guy at the end of the year. Let's try to trade him to another team so that we at least get something out of him.
Which is fair if you really don't think he's going to play.
Because you could maybe get a first-round pick for Le'Veon Bell.
I wouldn't give up a first round for him.
I think there's a team that would at least give you a first-round pick for this year.
I mean, if you had a team that was in the playoff hunt and, you know, let's just put it out there, if the Green Bay Packers are in the playoff hunt, they're winning a lot of games, but
and they need a running back.
Running game is awful. And I know people got a little bit, not angry at us, but they were like, you guys are discounting their run game a little bit. I don't think so, but let's say that's the case. They could go and get it. And they could say, sure, fine, we'll give you a first-rounder. We don't care. I believe they have 2 first-rounders, the Packers in particular. This is not really relevant because they got one from the Saints, I think. But they, I might just be making that up. I don't know.
I'm fact-checking.
Yeah, but, you know, that's a team that could go for it. And it's any team that could go for it, sure. But the Steelers are going to be in the playoff race. They're not going to want to trade Le'Veon Bell to a team that's going to potentially go up against them.
And that's the tricky thing of, yes, you are right. They do have the Saints, the Packers
there you go. I thought so.
Have the Saints first rounder this upcoming year. That was in the trade with when the Saints moved up, I believe, for Marcus Davenport.
Yeah.
That was in that deal. Also, first round pick, which became Rashad Penny, was in that deal as well. But the thing with Le'Veon is, yes, that's the tricky part is, because you're the Steelers, you're going to be, in my mind, 1 or 2 in this conference, maybe 3, depending on how the Jaguars, who we'll get to later in this podcast, you're going to be one of the top 2, maybe 3 teams in the AFC. Most people are expecting Patriots and Steelers
at the very
top
least,
of the AFC.
You're in the playoffs.
Exactly. Most people are picking them to win their division, which is an instant playoff berth. The thing that I wonder, though, is what's going to be more important in your mind? Because it all comes down to what is Le'Veon thinking.
Yeah.
Is there any way to win him back? If not, I would kind of sit there and go, hey, you know what? If this guy's going to walk, it might not matter what happens in the playoffs because he's going to walk. We get left with nothing. I would go ahead and if it was me and he's sitting out, or even if he's playing, if I'm the Steelers, I look to trade him around week 7, week 8, because I'd rather get something for him than just let him walk. I
completely agree. It's just not a very NFL type of move.
It's a very NBA move.
You know, and maybe someone wants to say, well, they did draft Mason Rudolph, so maybe they are looking into the future. But you know, you only got Big Ben for 1 or 2 more years because he is himself 2 years in a row contemplated retirement.
And that's another thing, because I tweeted yesterday when the long-term deal was not going to happen. I said, hey, this might sound like an overreaction, but mark this day down in the history books, July 16th, 2018. Basically, it is the beginning of the end of the Killer Bees' success in Pittsburgh, because this will probably be the last year they're all 3 together. Then after this year, how I'm looking at it, it's basically Big Ben, who has said he wants to play a couple more years, but if Le'Veon leaves and he goes, hey, you know what? This team doesn't have as many weapons as I would like. I'm just going to leave and save my body and not have to deal with this anymore. And then if you're the Steelers, you're stuck with, and I say stuck with, and it's not like, oh, he's bad, but like you're stuck with just Antonio Brown, and one player, one wide receiver is not going to win you a Super Bowl in the NFL. It takes a team. So Le'Veon leaves, Big Ben leaves.
Well, it's
Steelers
tough
have
because,
a problem.
You know, we talk about how Steelers are an obvious way into the playoffs, but almost 1,300 yards came from Le'Veon Bell last year. That is nothing to just kind of be like, oh, yeah, we'll replace it.
He had
not replacing that.
1,291 yards. And for the touchdowns, receiving he had 2, but on the ground he had 9 touchdowns last year.
Now, you miss out on that, and that could be a thing that loses you a few games, sure. But if I'm looking at this Le'Veon Bell standpoint, and the reason why the real answer to the question is, of course he's going to play this year for the Steelers.
Do you think he plays game 1? Do you think it's more like...
I do.
Do you think it's more like last year, which I heard that's what his agent was kind of hinting at, is he's not going to play training camp or the preseason, but he'll play week 1.
Which is what I would expect, and here's kind of why. We always say that when players have that contract year, they play big.
They blow up.
This is the contract year for, it's been really, but this is a huge contract year for Le'Veon Bell because anybody has a chance at him next year. And there are some teams, I'm going to say at Cleveland, San Francisco, the New York Jets, teams that have a lot of money to spend. Now, there are certain teams where you might argue, well, Cleveland might not really need that, but anybody could use Le'Veon Bell, sure. These teams are going to have money to pay. They're going to be willing to go out there, and Le'Veon Bell's deal was averaging to about $15 million a year, and that wasn't enough. So there's no way that the Steelers are going to get him back next year. Someone's going to have to pony up and pay huge for Le'Veon Bell because what is he? An elite offensive weapon.
Well, and that's the big thing with this deal where why one didn't get done is because from I was hearing is basically the Steelers were saying, hey, you're a running back. This is where your price point is. And Le'Veon Bell goes, oh, no. I do a lot more than just what a running back does. I'm an offensive weapon. I want to get paid more closer to not the exact amount, but he wanted money that would be closer to almost a wide receiver type of deal. Like he's looking at these wide receivers that are getting big deals, and he wanted a deal that isn't exactly the same amount, but also he wanted a little bit higher. Also, a big thing that was a hang-up that I was hearing from like NFL Live is that he wanted a ton of, like the one part that was important to him was guaranteed money. And I guess the Steelers weren't going to give him the amount that he wanted. Because it was when I was listening to, I think it was Louis Riddick today, he was saying that, like, well, yeah, that guaranteed money's important because if you get injured, if it ain't guaranteed, like, it don't matter how much money the contract is if it's not guaranteed. So he wanted that guaranteed, and the Steelers weren't going to give him what he wanted there. And I started to think immediately what teams could go after Le'Veon next year. And these are kind of the few. We'll kind of branch off into this discussion. Here's some of the teams that I thought could go after Le'Veon. Because for me, there's almost every team in the NFL. There's a few that'll be like, now we're like the Rams, now we're good. We got Todd Gurley. The Cowboys, now we're good. We got Ezekiel Elliott. Jaguars, we got Leonard Fournette. But there are a lot of teams that are going to say, let's just throw a deal at him, see if he comes. The thing that I would say for Le'Veon is, unless you're a playoff contender and a serious playoff contender, he ain't going to go there. So, like, teams like the Jets, the Dolphins, the Raiders in my mind, no chance. Not a chance. He ain't going there. So I looked at it, and these were some of the teams I was thinking about. First off, the Ravens. That'd be a very interesting divisional team. They're right now on the cusp. If they got a for-sure star running back, maybe that could push them over the edge. The Denver Broncos, depending on how they do this year. Case Keenum will still be the quarterback next year. That defense is still going to be a really good defense next year. They could really use a running back. I look at the Detroit Lions. Will they finally pony up and get a premier running back to help out Matthew Stafford in that offense? And then the other team that I thought of was the San Francisco 49ers. I know they just got Jerick McKinnon this past offseason, but who would you rather have, Le'Veon Bell or Jerick McKinnon? I'll go Le'Veon Bell.
Le'Veon Bell's definitely the bigger deal there. Here's the thing that I think I would be worried about on Le'Veon Bell's standpoint before I get into these teams and add one to the list, is that if I'm the Steelers and I know I'm not getting him back, I know I already made this point, but
just trade him.
No, I'm not going to trade him. I'm going to say, fine, we're going to get everything we can out of you. if you're showing up, we are running the ball more than any running back has ever ran the ball. Because I don't
Basically
care.
sabotaging him.
No, I'm not sabotaging him. I know the lifespan of what I get out of this player. I am getting everything out of him. And I don't care if he gets injured in that point. And me as a person, I do care. But I'm saying as a franchise owner, a head coach, whatever.
Morals come into that a little bit.
Yeah, but when you are one of these guys,
not very a moral
if
thing
your
to do.
team, yeah, but these are owners moral.
Oh, I know they're not, but I mean, to me, I would figure
the
that's
coaches,
kind of a
the GM?
shitty thing to do.
They're shitty people half the time, right?
I know that. I'm just saying, like,
but that's
the
my
part
point.
of I don't care about your health would be very shitty on the owner's part.
I don't think the NFL gives a shit about any of their health.
I know.
As much as they want to say we care,
It's all about that dollar.
we care
bill.
as long as you don't mention the word CTE.
It's all about that dollar bill.
Now, anyways, if I'm one of these guys, I'm saying I'm getting absolutely everything I can out of you. You know, almost 1,300 wasn't enough. Let's get 1,500 this time. You know, I want everything you can get because I want you, and I know that you're going to play hard because you want that new deal, right? And you're not getting it from us, you're getting it from someone else. We don't care. Now, that has the ability to, of course, scare teams off of, man, that's a lot of miles on this guy, or maybe he gets hurt, something like that. So that's risky for Le'Veon Bell, although it's actually potentially going to be a better thing for him if that,
because
not
if
that
he
gets
performs
hurt.
well with it, he can get the deal he wants.
Exactly. Now, here's the thing, though, for Le'Veon. The one team I want to add to that list, and I really
Can
think...
I take a guess at what team it is?
Sure.
AFC or NFC?
It's in the AFC.
In the AFC?
Yep.
I'm going to say the Chiefs. No, not
Nope.
the Chiefs. The Bengals.
Nope. Right division, though, the Browns. And I don't think he goes to the Bengals. They've got Joe Mixon. They like Joe Mixon.
The Browns are interesting, though, because, like, I mentioned the 49ers. Yeah, they just got Jerick McKinnon, but that's one back. The Browns just paid up, I'm going to say, for Carlos Hyde, and they drafted Nick Chubb. So what, you're going to add another...
But Nick Chubb is a different kind of guy than Le'Veon Bell.
So
those are two completely different running backs.
So would that become Le'Veon Bell's your main back, Nick Chubb's your backup, Carlos Hyde gets pushed?
I mean, you might even hope to have a Ingram and Kamara type of scenario here, but only you're kind of flipping the roles a little bit.
Because Carlos Hyde got a 3-year deal, so we would still have
I'm not
2
that
years.
worried about that.
Okay.
You know, I can make do with that or even get rid of him, trade him. Someone will take Carlos Hyde off my hands. I'm not that worried about Carlos Hyde. What I am worried about is the fact that I just drafted a rookie quarterback. I've got a better than everybody thinks defense. I have a lot of offensive weapons. You know what? I can take a shot at this guy because what model am I following? The Seahawks, the Rams. I'm following the Chicago Bears method right now. I am following that young player. Let's make it happen. You know, there are, like, San Francisco still has money, but San Francisco still has things they need to fill as well. And they already paid their quarterback. That's one reason why, even though I think San Francisco makes a lot of sense, the Ravens will possibly work as well because Joe Flacco is going to not be there for that long.
Not only
then you have a good defense, young rookie quarterback. You just got a nice offensive weapon as well.
Not only that, but if he is if he's got a little, what's the phrase I'm looking for? If he just wants to stick it to the Steelers.
Well, that's what I was going to bring up next. We're missing that part.
To say it's kind of like, what was it, Des Bryant? That's like, I want to go to someone in the division because I want to play you twice a year.
Well, I mean, why did Richard Sherman go from Seattle to San Francisco? Because Seattle lost their way, and now he's over here.
And he wants to see him twice a year and show him up.
You know, and it could go with the Browns, it could go with the Ravens either way. The Ravens are a little bit more of that more recent rivalry for sure. But I think either one would work, and either one's a good team. The reason I lean a little bit more to the Browns personally than the Ravens are that we don't really know when Joe Flacco is gone and when this guy's taking over.
But even I feel like Lamar Jackson is a smooth transition over to them still being successful. And if you give him a running back like Le'Veon Bell, that would be nice.
I think you give Baker Mayfield a running back like Le'Veon Bell, and you're going to get
nice
pretty much the same thing.
Here's the question I want to ask is, let's say Le'Veon sits out the first 8 games because half the season, 8 games. So let's say he sits out the first 9 weeks because of their bye.
Sure.
You give me what you think the wins and losses become if Le'Veon sits out all 8 of those games. Because I'll be honest, with Le'Veon, I had this team 10-0 to start the year. 10-0 with the team and with the schedule. That may change. I'll let you go first. What's your win-losses if Le'Veon sits out the first 8?
Let's see. I would still think they can beat the Browns, even though I think that's a toss-up. Honestly, with Le'Veon Bell, I think that's an upset potential game. The Chiefs, I'm going to lean towards the Chiefs if we're going to buy into this Patrick Mahomes hype. I'm going to lean into that one a little bit. Buccaneers, I don't think so. Ravens, it's a home game, so maybe they'll steal it from you. That's a good defense. But still, that one where I would feel kind of confident on the split, now I'm like, I don't know. Ravens could steal it, and they could sweep it. Falcons, I like the Falcons. I'm going to give this one to the Falcons. Bengals, no. And then Browns, let's see, is Browns week 7 or that is week 8?
Week 8.
Then Browns, maybe I'll let them split it with the Browns because, like I said, I think that first game could be an upset. But really, I think this team is 5-3.
So, like I said, I had them 10-0 with Le'Veon game 1. That's just how I see the Steelers team. I think is going to be really good this year. Without Le'Veon, for the first, I'll even go a step further.
And let's remember, this was a 13-3 team last year. They were already really good.
I'll say this because for our prediction video, Sean has them. This team, right now, I have them at 14-2. Like, that is how good I think the Steelers will be. However, without Le'Veon, those first 8, I got them losing to the Browns. I know people are going to be like, Ricky, they're the Browns. This team will come out and shock them. And if the Steelers don't have a consistent rushing attack, the Browns will make them pay.
Well, the Browns are not that bad of a team right now.
What the Browns will do, in my mind, if you don't have Le'Veon out there to take pressure off, hey, we're just going to let our pass rushers pin those ears back and go right after Big Ben. Make him beat you. And if they're constantly blitzing and you don't have a running game to kind of take that off, that could be a problem. Chiefs, I'm going to still say the Steelers because Patrick Mahomes is young, plus it's in Pittsburgh. If that was in Arrowhead, that would be a different situation.
I just think those first 2 games have upset potential.
They do. Like the Chiefs, it's not like a for sure loss. I'm just leaning into the Steelers because it's in Pittsburgh. And if I'm looking at the quarterbacks, veteran Big Ben over sophomore Mahomes, I'm going to go with Big Ben. Then the Buccaneers, they don't have Jameis Winston. They don't have a chance of winning that game. Then the Ravens, I'll give the Steelers the win at home. Then Falcons is a loss. Bengals is a loss. Browns, you'll beat them coming off of your bye. And then the Ravens will beat you. So my 10-0 to start the year just became what? You take away 4 of them, they're now 6-4. And overall, they went from 14-2 to 10-6, which would drop them. They're no longer, I think, one of the top 2. Yeah, they went from being the number 1 seed in the AFC at 14-2 to being the 4th seed playing wild card weekend at 10-6.
Funny that you have them at 10-6. I had them. I had them kind of debating between 11-5 and 10-6 at the moment where it stands. A lot is going to change. And then that maybe drops them at the worst to like a 9-7, but I still think 10-6. Some of those losses I talked about were still things that I could see happening even with Le'Veon Bell because, like I said, Browns, I just see it as
they're
upset
be
potential.
This year.
Chiefs is another potential upset one. The Ravens is just interesting on the split that I think is going to happen. I can see the Bengals coming out because I don't think the Bengals are actually going to be that bad this year. And I'm going to be talking about the Bengals in the near future.
Yeah.
But I do not think the Bengals are going to be a bad team this year. Now, I do think that Le'Veon Bell, whether he's there, and I do think he will be there the whole season, or if he takes off part of the games, he's got to play at least 6 games. And he's going to lose money if he only plays 6. So he's going to be playing games. I definitely kind of feel that with or without him, this 13-3 team is still going to go out there and win games. They're still going to be in the playoffs. It doesn't matter. But they still have tough competition. And with or without him, that's going to be the case because the Ravens are a good team. The Bengals are better this year. The Browns are we say it all the time, but at least on paper, the Browns are a better team this year as well.
They should be a lot better. I still think Browns are going to Browns.
It's the quarterback situation right now. There's a lot of mystery right there.
I want to support Hugh Jackson, but let's be honest, the track record's not there. And honestly,
1-31.
If you can't get some wins this year, I was even listening to a podcast where they said 5 to 6 wins or we fire Hugh Jackson this year is what
then
they were
you should have done
for.
it at 16.
Then you should have done it last year is basically what I'm thinking. This is where you guys come in. Let us know what you guys think down below in the comment section. How many games does Le'Veon play this year? I think even if he does sit out half the year, teams are going to want to give him the money next year just because of what kind of a running back
he's got less mileage on him then.
That too. And he's a running back that's under 30, so you give him a 4-year contract. That would be good enough to, boom, he's 30 at the end of that contract. Let us know what you guys think down below in the comment section. What do you think about Le'Veon? Will he sit out? What do you think of him maybe not being a Steeler next year? Let us know what you think in that comment section down below. And Mark, let's now move on into the main meat and potatoes of the podcast. Why everyone was coming. We had to put that Le'Veon Bell story at the beginning just because it was hot news, but we're continuing our previews into the beginning of the season. We are getting, Mark, closer and closer to actual football.
That's right.
Back on our TVs.
Well, we're like 3 weeks from the Hall of Fame game.
We are very close. Like, this is the part mid-July where I can smell that August and be like, get here.
I think a lot.
Get here.
Don't most training camps start next week? I mean, the Bears have already started.
Training camps are one thing, but like actual like preseason games.
Oh,
and
for
then
sure.
Once preseason games start, it's like I can smell the regular season.
Once you gave me episode 1 of Hard Knocks, I'm like, hey, it's a real thing.
Plus, for me, I'm also on the college side of things. That starts end of August. So
it's
like,
very fast.
That is like, it just starts steamrolling as soon as we get to August. But we're looking at the AFC South today. If you guys are new to our previews, how we look at things, basically what we do is we go from worst all the way up to first. So the order for the AFC this week, or AFC South, I should say, will be, we will start off with the Texans, then move on into the Colts, the bottom feeders from last year. Then we'll look at the Titans, and then we'll round everything out with the Jacksonville Jaguars, who were so close to being in the Super Bowl last year. But the first team we're going to look at is the Houston Texans, and this is an interesting team this year because I think this is a team that, one, could be a playoff team this year. Like, I see them, when healthy, could be between 8-8 and 10-6 this year. The biggest question for me and for this Houston Texan team is how healthy will Deshaun Watson be for this season? It was reported in early June that Texan stars believe that he'll be ready for training camp. He did an interview during Super Bowl week with the Dan Patrick Show where I don't know if it was planned this way, but his jeans had like an open hole over the knee to where you could see the scar.
Oh, I'm sure it was planned.
Dan Patrick asked him about it, and I want to ask you, what do you think is going to be the deal with Deshaun Watson this year coming off of that ACL injury? It's not an injury that's a death sentence for guys anymore, but this is a team that needs him to be healthy if they want to be successful this year.
Yeah, it's the thing that it's not a death sentence for sure, but it is not his first injury.
Second.
That's rough in that case. I expect Deshaun Watson to be back week 1. I don't doubt that at all. I think they're going to go easy on him in the preseason because nobody's doubting that Deshaun Watson is the number 1 quarterback here. He's QB1 without a doubt. They're going to have him out there. They're going to be expecting him to just kind of go out there and sling it, really. But the fear that I have for Deshaun Watson comes down to this, and the reason why I half-jokingly said it to you of, who's going to be injured again, Deshaun Watson, is because his offensive line is terrible.
Right.
It is bad.
Right now, according to ourlads.com, they have the starting offensive line going from left to right being Julian Davenport, Zach Fulton, Nick Martin in the middle, Senio Clemente, and then at right tackle, you've got Seantrell Henderson. That's your offensive line right now.
Yeah.
Martinez Rankin is listed as the backup left tackle at the moment.
I mean, And without a doubt, it's not like they went out there and said, we have a bad offensive line. We're not going to fix it. No, they definitely went out and grabbed some stuff. But, with Martinez Rankins, of course, having that's an actual draft pick being spent. And they didn't have a ton of draft picks to spend. So, it's not like they could go out there and just fix the offensive line. The offensive line is not something that you can fix in one offseason.
Henderson, Clemente, and Fulton all were signed this offseason from Buffalo, New Orleans, and KC.
The problem for when you look at a lot of these guys is they weren't really people that...
They're not big marquee names.
It's not even that they're not big marquee names. They're just not very good either. And when you already had Nick Martin last year for the Texans, just kind of... People were looking at him thinking, what the hell happened? Now, he could bounce back for sure, and their offensive line last year had injury issues, but it's just, I do not feel confident that my, prize rookie he's a sophomore now, prize sophomore quarterback is going to be healthy when this is the offensive line I'm putting in front of him.
No, and that's for me, the biggest thing with Houston is can they stay healthy? Because, I look at the offense and it goes, all right, the offensive line to me might not be one of the strengths of this team, but I look at the rest of the offense. They have, to me, one of the better, I'm going to say the best young quarterback right now, out of the sophomores and stuff. I put him even ahead of Patrick Mahomes right now, and he only played
Mahomes has played one game.
Exactly. Deshaun Watson, this Texan team... The Browns wouldn't have had the 4th overall pick if he did not get injured. This team would have been a lot. I don't want to say a lot better. I don't know if they make the playoffs. I don't know. Well, they could because the Titans were only 9-7 last year. But I think this team is well above maybe 8-8 last year.
For sure.
Not 4-12 where they were, because you look at the rest of this team, wide receivers, they still got Will Fuller. They still got DeAndre Hopkins, still got Braxton Miller out there. You still got Lamar Miller and Deonta Foreman in the backfield. The defense is just as big of a question as the offense with injuries too, because J.J. Watt always gets injured, and you've got guys like, Witten Merciless out there, and you've got Jadeveon Clowney, and the big thing that we haven't talked about with the defense yet, and I'll bring it up, the addition of the Honey Badger. I know the Honey Badger, I'm going to say, ain't what he used to be when he came into the league, but that should be a big add for the Texan defense.
Well, it's certainly going to help you out when you have one of the best pass rushes. That's going to make you deadly right there. So, getting that pressure on quarterbacks is going to make mistakes happen, and the Honey Badger capitalizes on mistakes.
Because the Honey Badgers don't give a shit.
Exactly. But the thing that I got to say with the Houston Texans, if you just show me the rosters of teams, with the exception of, like I said, the offensive line. If I can ignore the offensive line and I am just looking at rosters, I have no knowledge of injury history, I'm going to say, the Houston Texans are probably in the AFC Championship game. This roster
You're saying last year?
No, I'm saying right now.
Okay.
If I do not know anything about injuries and I am ignoring the offensive line, this team probably gets to the AFC Championship game. This roster is that good. Deshaun Watson showed that he can be an incredible gunslinger. I'm using gunslinger on purpose, and we'll get to it. They have 2 very good wide receivers on both ends that they can have. Lamar Miller is a fantastic running back. This defense has an amazing pass rush. They've got... they've got certain parts of the secondary that maybe could be improved a little bit, but they obviously went out and got the Honey Badger for a reason to improve that. But when you have that good of a pass rush, like I said, it's going to help you capitalize on some mistakes because you're forcing quarterbacks to throw it too fast. And the flip side is the AFC is not that strong of a conference. Well, you're really competing with 3 or 4 teams.
And let's put it this way, because I think it was the Texans I made the joke about last year. If Deshaun Watson was healthy, they were going to finish 8-8 because the first 6 games, they were loss, win, loss, win, loss, win, win.
Yeah.
And they were kind of alternating 3-3 after 6. The thing I don't like about this Houston team has nothing to do with the personnel. It has everything to do with the schedule, because this is a year for me with Houston that if you look at their schedule, the first half of it, I'll say not even the first half, the first 10 games of it are like, wow, that's a losing record. Then I look from week 11 on and I go, that's a really winnable record. Like, this is a team, even with Deshaun Watson, that, I mean, you could say that, like, the Titans, the Colts, the division's going to be interesting, even the Jaguars, because of how are you going to play? Are you going to split with the Jaguars? Are they going to take both games? The Colts, we're going to get into them. How do they look with Andrew Luck coming back? The Titans, what are they going to be like? They lose DeMarco Murray to retirement. They've got a new head coach coming in. But there's a possibility to me that this Texan team could go the first 5 games at New England, at Tennessee, at New York, or home against New York, at Indy, and then home against Dallas, could go 0-5 to start the year, kind of stumble into their Week 10 bye with maybe a couple wins, but then after that bye, only lose 2 games the rest of the way.
I still think, like I said, with ignoring injuries and the weak spot of the offensive line, if I was just going to say that, I think that this is probably the second best team in the AFC. Now, like I said, that is ignoring something that is a big issue. Injuries has been plaguing this team for about 3 years now. And, like I said, this offensive line, I hate to harp on it, but that is going to kill the longevity potentially of your quarterback who's already had 2 big injuries that are serious injuries for a quarterback who has a lot of mobility. The other thing about him, I've said that he's a gunslinger a few times. He likes to sling it. He likes to throw the ball. He was averaging, a little bit, a tiny amount over 1 interception a game. Not terrible, but when you have a gunslinger type of guy, I mean, he had a game where he had 3 interceptions in it. When you have that bad of an offensive line, that's only going to get worse
downfield.
Yeah, it's only going to get worse. You're going to have guys getting in your face immediately, and you're going to be pressured to make decisions. Now, Deshaun Watson's a very intelligent quarterback. He is not the kind of guy who just says, double coverage? No, triple coverage. Yeah, I'm going to sling it out there. But I mean, still, you're going to be making bad mistakes potentially because you're just being pressured. Teams know that. He's going to be facing some really, really good defenses this year with teams like the Jaguars, the Browns. He's going to be facing the Eagles. He's going to face the Broncos. The Patriots defense, they don't have their kind of mastermind anymore, but they should still be good.
Here's the thing I'm going to say to kind of combat that is I know the Jacksonville game, he didn't play the entire game, but that was still a game where even though they lost and they only scored 7 points, he was the reason they scored 7 points and only had 1 touchdown, 1 INT. Really, the biggest factor is he was sacked 4 times. Well, really, you can almost put some sacks on the offensive line.
Sure.
The games to me that were the worst, just by looking at touchdown to INT, the Patriots, where he went 2 touchdowns to 2 INTs, still a flat 1 for 1. Other than that, it was the Seahawk game he got injured in that he had 4 touchdowns, 3 INTs. You look, he played the Browns, 3 touchdowns, only 1 INT. That defense, it got, like, Demarius Randall wasn't there last year, but that defense was still good on paper last year, and he went 3-1.
Oh, I agree with you, but we're all...
Kansas City was a good defense. He went 5-0 in that game.
But Kansas City had a rough kind of middle of the
believe
season.
At that point they didn't have Eric Berry at that point, which was huge. That was a huge injury for them last year. But I think what the big
point for me with Deshaun Watson is the fact that, and I'm not saying he's going to go out there and throw 25 interceptions.
You're saying inconsistency. One game it's this, the other game it's 5-0.
No, I'm just saying that you're putting your quarterback in a bad situation. He's a gunslinger. I know he's going to throw interceptions, but I also know he's going to probably throw more touchdowns. So I'm not upset about him throwing. It's like Brett Favre. I'm not worried about him, making a dumb mistake because the next drive he's going to make up for it.
Force the ball into a needle hole.
Yeah, because he might not get it this time, but the next 3 times he's probably going to get it.
I mean,
I'm not worried about
19 touchdowns to 8 INTs in 6
Exactly.
games.
I'm not worried about that. What I am worried about is people have tape, so that changes things a little bit. This is coming off of an injury. How's his confidence going to be when he actually is facing another team? This offensive line will get him hit for sure. And teams know you hate to say things like this, but teams know, hey, this guy's got a weak knee. Let's make sure we hit him.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I'm just worried about that for Deshaun Watson. And like I said, I'm not expecting him to go out there and lead the league in interceptions. I'm just saying that it's going to be the game plan for the defenses to get the pressure on him because he will give us chances to get takeaways.
To me, the most important, like, if everyone stays healthy, the most important, I keep looking at the schedule. And like I told you before we started recording today's podcast, I'm kind of in the mode right now where I've gone through my season predictions.
Yeah.
I'm not ready to be like Colin Cowherd yet and be like, these are my season predictions for this year. We'll get to that after we finish the previews. We'll do our prediction podcast,
which is funny because I'm the one who sounds down on the Texans, but if we gave our 2 records, Texans fans would like me better.
Exactly.
Probably.
Like, I'll be honest. My final outlook for the Texans this year is my window is 8-8 to 10-6. Ideally, injuries could happen, which could make them a worse team. But right now, how I have it is they're 8-8, probably missing the playoffs. Either missing the playoffs or maybe just squeaking in, depending on tiebreakers. But I keep looking at the schedule, and to me, the most important part of this schedule is going to be the first 5 games because New England, I'll be honest, I don't think they win that. They didn't win it last year. I don't think they win that game this year.
No, that's going to be tough.
The only 2 games in the first 5 that I could see them winning that right now I have them as losses are the Titans and the Colts. I only did that right now because I feel like this Texan team at the worst splits the division and goes 3-3 in the division. But then they play 2 teams from the NFC East where the Cowboys should be improved this year. Having Zeke back, not having to worry about any suspension, having the best offensive line in football. That's going to be a tough game. Yeah, it's in Houston, but still a tough game. Let's be honest, the Cowboys are so close to Houston, it's almost like a home game for them too. And the Giants should be improved this year. Getting Saquon Barkley, getting rid of McAdoo, getting a head coach that they hope is going to be competent and actually work with Eli to make sure that offense does good things. Yeah. Getting OBJ back from injury. I have a hard time looking at this first 5, and even if they go 2-5 in the first 5, this could be like that's where my 8-8, 10-6 runs in. If they go 0-5 to start, then we're looking more 8-8. If they go 10-6, it's because they squeaked out some wins in these first 5.
I just feel like the Patriots. I'm gonna give it to the Patriots, but you're playing the Titans team, which I think it's a home. Well, it is a home game for the Titans, but I think that the Titans can beat you in this one just because of the fact that
it's on the road.
Well, it's a home game for them, and the Titans are going to be a much better team this year than they were last year because they were really handcuffed coaching-wise. But with that being said, it's a new coach where they're going to have some adjustment going on there. It's a new offense they're going to have. There's adjustment right there. And do Bill Belichick coaches really turn out into much of anything? More often than not, they don't. Then we go on to the Giants, also a new coach. There's going to be adjustments there. It's not going to be an instant thing, especially going from Ben McAdoo's let's throw the ball all over everybody to Pat Shurmur's we're going to be very smart and methodical with the ball this time. And also the last time Pat Shurmur had an opportunity to be a head coach, it went horribly.
Yeah.
So I think that saying that the Titans and Giants are more likely losses, I'm not convinced on that one. I think that they probably in the first 5 games are a 3-2 team, but then they get to go on to play the Bills. They're going to have to play the Jaguars, which is rough, but they're going to play the Dolphins again. They get these kind of, I don't want to call them gimme games, but they get these games that are, they're going to be the favored team mixed in there enough.
And the one thing I am going to say to defend Pat Shurmur is you make the kind of backhanded comment
it was not good.
Oh, it didn't go well the first time. Let's see you go back to 2011. You be the head coach of the Browns and win more than 4 games.
I think that if you're a
Browns
head coach,
were not good.
If you're a head coach, this is going back to the old baseball scouts. If you're a head coaching candidate and you took a job in Cleveland, I'm saying, well, he makes bad decisions. We know that. One of my favorite.
You're thinking of Moneyball.
Yeah, watch Moneyball. He's got an ugly girlfriend. He's got bad eyes.
Oh man, I remember. Yeah,
I love that quote.
it's basically, it's coach of the Browns makes bad decisions. But the other thing about this schedule I can't help but think of, going back to the injuries, and I'm sorry, Texan fans, if it feels like we're harping on it. So right now, as I'm flipping wins and losses, I have this team 8-8. Could flip some, make them 10-6, but right now 8-8. If they get injured again, like J.J. Watt's injured, if Deshaun Watson gets injured, this second half of the schedule that right now I only have them losing 2 games from week 11 on, if key injuries happen, they lose to the Titans, they lose to the Browns, they lose to the Colts.
Yeah, I mean, their quarterback's going to be Brandon Weeden.
And it's funny that if injuries plague this team again, this second half of the year that I said, it looks so winnable for them, it makes them, I just listed off 4 games, makes them a 4-12 team again. Like that to me, the only way the Texans finish with a similar record that they did last year is if they're decimated by injuries like they were last year.
Which, like you said, we don't want to harp on it, but that's been the team's MO for the last few years. You are a team that gets injured. You're one of the most injured teams every year. And until there's some, things to change it. I mean, I'm a Chicago Bears fan. I understand it. Every year, every player who you had hope in gets hurt.
Yours is, I'll be honest, yours is because of your field.
The damn turf.
It's that field. By the end of the year, it's like, I don't want to play there. I'm going to get injured.
The Chicago Bears week 1 had their number 1 and number 2 wide receiver both get injured. It doesn't matter what week it is. It's just the way it is.
And you say turf, isn't it still natural grass?
It's actual grass.
That's what I was going to say. You say turf, it's natural grass.
Yeah, it's real. It's the real thing.
I was like, we still have that natural grass up here in Chicago. That nice Kentucky bluegrass.
Yeah, right.
With those divots.
It's just, it doesn't matter. It happens. And that's the hard thing.
Because you get a T Swift concert that rolls through and those supports, they just put divots right there.
They just got to stop playing in Soldier Field and just play at Wrigley. That's the only thing we need.
I mean, at that point in the year, the season's almost over. It depends on October is usually when the season ends for us. A little World Series.
There's literally an amphitheater
so close.
Not even half a mile away.
No, yeah.
It's like not even a quarter of a mile.
But if I'm Ed Sheeran, I can sell more tickets at Soldier Field than I can at the dinky amphitheater.
It's an amphitheater. It's not that dinky. When you play
compared to Soldier Field,
a stadium,
there's a prestige
you got half
to
the
it.
stuff closed off.
There's a prestige.
Oh
to
yeah,
it.
for sure. But the city of Chicago needs to stop letting people play there.
Any final thoughts on the Texans before we move on into the Colts?
The Texans for me are the boom or bust team.
Okay.
Purely based on injury and how Deshaun Watson comes back.
Yeah, injury. Have I said injury enough? That's going to be the storyline for the Texans. Can they stay healthy? Because if they stay healthy, 8-8, 10-6, could see them more on into that 10-6, and they could be a playoff team if they get to that 10-6 mark. But this is where you guys come in. Let us know what you think down below in the comment section. What do you think of the Texans this year? Will they stay healthy? And what do you think, Texan fans, of that schedule? Am I harping too much on those first 5 games? Let us know what you think down below in that comment section. And speaking about injured quarterbacks, though, Mark, I mean, we're looking at Deshaun Watson. Let's just move on into the next logical point
injured
of injured quarterbacks. Andrew Luck, we're expecting him to be back this year, which I will be honest, if he is back and at least about 75%, I would say, this team 8-8, just with it. Like with Andrew Luck, they become such a better team than they were last year. I know they got Jacoby Brissett behind them, but the thing I want to ask you first, I'll let you pick which one you want to start with.
Okay.
Do you want to start talking about Andrew Luck and what we can expect from him coming off the injury, or how this team could look different under Frank Reich coming over from the Philadelphia Eagles?
Well, I think let's start with Andrew Luck because then we can expand out to the entire offense.
Perfect.
And the rest of the team. So with Andrew Luck, he looks like he's fine. He looks like he's healthy. He looks like life's going to be good. But until we really see him out there in his pads throwing the ball, you still had that little bit of doubt in your mind of, is he actually going to come back? Because I drafted him, in fantasy football last year. I thought he was going to be back for sure last year at some point, enough to maybe squeeze me into the playoffs. But it's one of these things here where it's just going to be a rough situation. And, he has sat out long enough to where, fortunately for him, the offensive line is quite a bit better. You got to worry about Ryan Kelly, Matt Slauson, who's okay. But besides that, Quentin Nelson, huge upgrade. You've got that amazing piece right there. Now, you did lose Frank Gore, which I think is going to be an unfortunate part because I don't really know where that running back is.
I don't. Right now, the depth chart I'm looking at lists Marlon Mack as the starter, but it's probably going to be a running back by committee. You got Mack, then you got Wilkins and Hines are both drafted, and also got to give some love to former Fighting Illini Josh Ferguson, who's also there, Christine Michael and Robert Turbin, who former Seahawks, are on that running back committee right now as well. It's probably going to be a running back committee behind him. But, offensively, this team, we're not expecting it's not going to be a ground and pound. It's going to be Andrew Luck throwing it to his wide receivers where he's still got
T.Y. all day.
He's got T.Y. out there. They bring in Ryan Grant from the Redskins, which I always go back to the joke of when Ryan Grant failed his physical with the Ravens, all Ravens fans together said, "Who's Ryan Grant? Who's that again?" Yeah. They pick up Deion Kane in the draft, where I'm high on him. Clemson guy, I don't think he becomes the third option, but I hope he does good things.
He might, because there's not that many options here.
My whole thing is I wonder if there will be enough weapons for Andrew Luck to do anything this year. And I look at the defense, and this was a defense that was not really good last year. The only defenses that allowed more yards than them last year were the Giants and Tampa Bay, who they were also top 15 picks in the draft as well. I look at this team, and if Andrew Luck wills it, they're, to me, an 8-8 team down the road. That's the best they're going to be. But I would not be surprised if this team kind of stumbles into a 5-11, 6-10 season, because to me, the question with the Colts this year is how far can Andrew Luck drag this team through this year?
Yeah, and it's interesting because you really look at last year and you look at this team and you're like, wow, this is one of the worst teams without a doubt. They couldn't pass the ball. They were okay running the ball, but below the middle of the pack. They didn't score touchdowns, and they gave up a lot of touchdowns. So they were pretty much at the bottom for most everything, except the running game, which they were just below average. Now, there are tons of, but they didn't have their number one, quarterback out there. They got a coach that got fired and should have gotten fired previously. They don't have a good defense. They've never had a good defense. The offensive line was still a work in progress. There's just so many things to this puzzle. They had to trade for a quarterback because their quarterback situation was so bad without Andrew Luck, to where this is just one of those times where, what did we say, Ricky? Last year, throw it out. Nothing matters. It's all brand new.
Well, it's you're taking the whiteboard and basically not just erasing everything. You're taking that nice little paper towel with the water and you're just washing that whiteboard completely clean. So there is no remnants of last year's marker on that whiteboard.
Exactly. But the problem for the Colts are that their win-loss is completely dependent on Andrew Luck being back.
Exactly.
You need him back because, like I said, offensive line, it's better. It's the best it's been in a long time. You've got T.Y. Hilton still. I'm not a huge Eric Ebron fan, really. And I wonder about, besides T.Y. Hilton, really where the rest of these options are.
Eric Ebron will be all right he'll be all right for them is what I want to say. He's not going to be
Andrew
anything.
Luck needs somebody who's
he's not
going to be
anything
guy.
Spectacular, but he could be a reliable option, a safety. I think, if anything, Eric Ebron is the second, and Jack Doyle becomes the safety blanket for Andrew Luck and this team.
Yeah, that's probably the thing that they really need to have happen. But I don't think there's a ton of separation between Doyle and Ebron here. And it's a kind of offense where they don't have great. T.Y. Hilton is great, but besides him, they don't have great other options. They don't really have a running back out there. So they're going to need, and because they pass the ball so much, they need quality guys out there catching the ball.
And, like, that's to me where, like, the question is how many, like, for me, how many games is this team going to win? Because right now I have them at 8-8, but I'm looking at this schedule going, the beginning of the schedule is interesting because, like, the Bengals could be winnable, but I could see the Bengals winning that game. And then you get two NFC East road games right off the bat. You get Alex Smith and that Redskin team that's not a bad team.
No, they're fine.
Out there in Washington. And then you get the defending Super Bowl champions. Reich returns home to Philadelphia where he was last year. You get the Texans week 4. If they're healthy, that could be a close game. And then you get the Patriots week 5. So, I mean, kind of like what I was saying with the Texans could be true with the Colts, where if they go 0-5 to start the season, even with Andrew Luck, I'm not surprised. I wouldn't put my money on that because, I mean, the Bengals game could go either way. But, I mean, even, like, to me, even with their second half, it's like, yeah, there's winnable games against, like, the Titans and the Dolphins, but then they end the year, they play the Jaguars, the Texans, the Cowboys, and the Giants. That is a 4-game stretch that I could see them 2-2 at best, maybe 3-1, but I wouldn't be surprised if they go 1-3 or even 0-4
Honestly,
in that stretch.
I mean, with Andrew Luck, things change because he can will this team to win games. But without Andrew Luck, this team's going to be lucky to win 1 or 2 games going into the bye week at week 9.
Yeah.
With Andrew Luck, I still think that the Eagles is going to be really tough. The Patriots are going to be really tough. I think that the Texans will be tough. The Redskins are difficult, but the Bengals, there's a game where they can win. The Colts, the Bills, those are games they can win. They can compete with the Redskins as well.
You mean the Jets and the Bills?
Jets and the Bills.
You said the Colts and the Bills.
Yeah, the Colts. Well,
the Colts can beat the Colts.
They play themselves.
They beat themselves.
You know,
they didn't. The other team didn't win. The Colts just really beat themselves. In this
the worst thing for the Colts is then you know, especially if Andrew Luck doesn't start week 1, it takes him a little bit, or if it's just a slow start. Coming out of that bye week, you still got to play the Jaguars twice. You're still going to play the Titans. You're going to play the Cowboys and the Giants, who you were saying before are going to be improved this year. The only one that's kind of an easier one that you have is the Dolphins. And there's a lot of people out there who think that the Dolphins are going to be a better team this year.
I would say the Titans in Indy, too. I would give the Colts a win against the Titans in Indy.
With Andrew Luck, for sure.
Yeah, without Andrew Luck, it's like, without Andrew Luck, the only teams in the first, 8 games that I could see them beating are the Jets and the Bills, and I wouldn't even be surprised if they lost to the Bills.
But it's going to be so dependent on this.
Or I'll say the Jets, because the Bills' quarterback situation I don't like as much as the Jets.
Yeah, it's so dependent on this new offense, which with new coach in Frank Reich and having him from the Philadelphia Eagles, former Super Bowl champions, that is going to be the kind of thing where we really need to see, once again, what is the answer to the question? Who is it that really turned in above average rookie season for Carson Wentz into amazing and took a backup quarterback almost out of the NFL and made him into a Super Bowl MVP. There
what
are
you're
3
saying
people
is,
that could have been.
Peterson, Reich, or DiFilippo? Who are we giving the credit to?
Exactly. There are 3 people who that could have been, and they all went in different directions. So we're going to find out, hopefully, the answer to that question. But the problem is, I think, for right now, I think it's going to be a delayed response for it. Because for Reich, this year, it doesn't really matter. Even if Andrew Luck comes back and wills them to win 8 games, doesn't matter. You're not going to the playoffs. You still don't have enough pieces yet.
I'm not going to say they don't make the playoffs, because to me, how I'm looking at it is right now I have 4 teams in my middle of the pack. And only one of these teams we have yet to look at on a preview. The 4 in no particular order: Colts, Texans, a healthy Texan team, Chiefs, and Ravens. Those are right now all the teams I have around 8-8, 9-7, right there in the middle. It's, to me, out of those 4 teams, who is going to step up? who's the one that's going to win a game or two to position themselves for that 6th playoff spot in the AFC. Because, like, I could see multiple teams tying at 8-8 and it coming down to a tiebreaker, or I could see any of these. The Colts getting a win here or there that they shouldn't have. The Texans, the Ravens, the Chiefs, kind of winning one or two to then give them that position of, all right, we're 9-7 while you guys are 8-8. We're now in that 6th spot. You guys are sitting out of the playoffs.
Yeah, well, I think the Colts know that they are not a we're striking right now kind of team. You know, you look at what they do. They trade back to get more picks. They get Quentin Nelson, who is just a secure block.
Yeah.
You know, they get some nice things. What I like too of getting more offensive line in Smith and going on the defensive side, and getting a guy like Leonard hitting the defensive end position twice in the 2nd round. They did a lot to really kind of shore up this team, not for an immediate impact, but coming up soon. And Reich is taking this idea of, hey, I know that this team has been going through a rebuild. That's okay. I know our quarterback is injured. I don't even need him to play next year all 16 games. I do want him to come back at some point, but I am okay with this team not being established yet because it's not our time. We're going to get there, but it's not our time yet.
The thing that I'm typing to look at is it's been so long since Andrew Luck has started. I just wanted to look up really quick so I don't misspeak here. Yeah, so the last 2 seasons with Andrew Luck, 2017 not being counted because he didn't play all that year, and even 2015 he only played 7 games. The last 2 years that you had Andrew Luck for some games, you were 8-8. The last year that you made the playoffs was the last full 16-game season. The 3 full 16-game seasons you've had with Andrew Luck, all 11-5, all have gone to the playoffs. One of those was a championship, an AFC game in 2014 where you lost to the Patriots. Am I saying that with an Andrew Luck playing 16 games, this team goes 11-5? No. But this year with this team, if Andrew Luck plays all 16 games, I could see them being, again, like I said, 8-8, and him dragging this team. It's kind of like I almost want to compare the Colts this year to think of the Cleveland Cavaliers in the NBA from this last season without the expectation of a finals, where Andrew Luck, much like LeBron James, will be good enough and great enough to drag this Colts team into a 6th seed.
Well, plus, I mean, really, the conference is weak as well. The Eastern Conference is pretty weak in the NBA.
Exactly.
Where, yes, the AFC Conference is the weaker of the two.
I was going to say, it is weaker.
But I don't think 8-8 is good enough to get you in. This is not and I know this has been a while since this is not Sam Bradford's Rams getting in and everyone's saying, really? Or the Seahawks with that Marshawn Lynch, the beast mode where everyone said there's no reason for this team to even be here.
Just to make you happy, I'm going to, looking at my wins and losses, there's 2 games that can flip with Andrew Luck, and it'll make them 10-6. Bengals week 1, Raiders week 8.
Well, if they're a 10-6 team, yeah, sure, they can get in.
They are, to me, healthy with Andrew Luck playing all 16. Their win-loss, them and the Texans, to me, are almost the same. My window is I could see them 7-9, 8-8. 10-6 is probably the best I can see them this year. And that's to me, for the Colts, 10-6 is if the Patriots went 16-0. It is a perfect year for them if they go 10-6.
The hard thing for the Colts is just everyone's going under the assumption that Andrew Luck's going to come back and be rookie Andrew Luck, or be that 2014 Andrew Luck, 40 touchdowns, 16 interceptions. Everyone's expecting that's what he's going to be. He could come back and be a guy who's throwing 20 touchdowns and 18 interceptions. And only be throwing for about 3,500 yards because he is just not completely ready yet. And even if he is completely ready yet, it's been a long time since he's played. It's going to take some time of really adjusting and getting back into it. It could be a slow start.
Before I say what I was going to say, I want to ask you this because I just looked at the preseason and I don't remember this ever happening. Do you remember in your lifetime a team playing a team week 4 of the preseason and then opening with that same team week 1?
I don't. I'm sure it's happened.
Because the Colts are at Cincinnati week 4 of the preseason and then host them week 1 of the regular season.
Yeah, I feel like that's a silly thing to do. I'm sure it's happened in our lifetime, in NFL history of the preseason too. It's happened, but yeah, that's a little ridiculous.
What I was going to say, though, is the one Colt preseason game I'm circling for I have to watch this game. I have to see this game in one way or another. August 25th, week 3 of the preseason. It's the Niners and the Colts in Indianapolis. Because week 3, that's going to be the week where, all right, we're giving the starters the most snaps that they've ever seen in order to get them ready for the regular season. And to me, that is going to be an interesting game to watch because we're finally going to see, we'll see Andrew Luck for like a series against Seattle and Baltimore. But we're finally going to see our best look at Andrew Luck and what we can expect for him this season. But also on the other side, you're going to get hype with Jimmy Garoppolo. And that to me is going to be a preseason game where it's like, all right, we're going to get the best look at an up-and-coming quarterback in Jimmy Garoppolo. And then what we can expect from the injured quarterback trying to come back to what he once was.
But the reason why I'm going to say make sure you circle it in pencil so you can erase it is there's no guarantee Andrew Luck's going to play. If I'm the Colts, I'm saying I don't know that I don't know if I want him to play at all. I don't even know if he's going to be ready to play in the preseason. He still hasn't thrown as far as I'm aware, he still hasn't thrown a normal NFL-sized football. Someone can check that on me.
He's still throwing that miniature football?
The little Nerf ball? Yeah, I think he's still throwing that thing. But, they expect him to be ready for training camp and be out there throwing footballs and being completely healthy. But who's to say that he doesn't get out there and, he's ready, but it just doesn't feel right again. Let's just give it a moment. Because Andrew Luck blames being too eager to come back for his continued absence now. So I think they're going to take it very carefully. If things just aren't feeling right, they're not going to force it. So, he might not even be ready. I do fully believe that he's going to play the majority of the games this season, but he might kind of ease into some stuff. And if things aren't feeling great week 1, week 2, he might not play.
The last big update I'm kind of seeing, and this is from early June, is that the Colts will limit his workload in training camp. So training camp for sure, he's going to get his workload kind of limited, which is smart because you're not going to overdo it in, I'm going to say, useless training camp where just because he's playing all of training camp, you're working him really hard, doesn't affect your wins and losses. He is going to be the linchpin of this year, though, for the Colts, and he is going to make this team go. If he's not there, I could see this team being a 4-12 team again. If he is there, they're an 8-8 team right now in my mind, but I wouldn't be surprised with a really good year if they are 10-6. Any final thoughts on the Colts before we move on into the Titans?
To me, really, the thing that summarizes the Colts for me is just that it's a huge mystery, and we're going to find out a lot as soon as we actually see Andrew Luck playing against another team.
Well, this is where you guys come in. Let us know what you think down below in that comment section. What do you expect from the Colts this year? Will Andrew Luck be healthy, play all 16, and how far can he bring this Colts team? Let us know what you guys think down below in that comment section. And Mark, now we move on into the Tennessee Titans. The whole reason, I'm going to be honest, it's the whole reason why I wore this shirt. Why I wore my Attack on Titan shirt, because it says Titans, and we're talking about the Titans in this preview. We finally get to Tennessee. Before we hit the record button, it's like you just said, we finally get to a playoff team in this preview.
That's right.
The next two teams we'll be looking at are playoff teams. And the first thing I want to ask with the Titans is basically this. They have a new head coach coming in Mike Vrabel. They bring in new offensive coordinator who was the quarterback coach with the Rams under McVay and Matt LaFleur. What should we expect from this Titan team who was already a playoff team last year with these coaching changes, and what can we expect from Marcus Mariota with the LaFleur offense?
Well, I think that here's the thing for the Tennessee Titans. A lot of people got really hyped up on the Titans last year and thought that they're finally going to do it. This is when they're going to make this move. Marcus Mariota is going to lead this team into success. And they've got a young team put together, but we just were maybe a year too early. And part of that is awful job as far as coaching. It was not done well. It was very predictable. It was very obvious. It was very slow moving. Nothing was going well for it. So with that adjustment, sure, it's going to be there. But you look at some of these teams. You look at some of these young studs out there, like obviously Mariota, Derrick Henry, Corey Davis, who are, those two guys, Derrick Henry, Corey Davis, even Mariota putting him in there. Young guys who just kind of haven't really gotten to that full potential just yet. They have more left in them. And I think that I'm not 100% sure on Mike Vrabel, but he's going to be a defensive focused guy, I think. So you have a good offensive coordinator who's really going to help lead the way forward for this and get the most out of everybody. I think this is finally that year where you see these this young roster, these young players actually hitting that stride, reaching forward, and kind of giving us what we expect out of them.
Now, one of the things that Titan fans are going to say, guys, you got to talk about DeMarco Murray announcing his retirement. We lost DeMarco Murray. Me personally, I don't think it's going to be a huge loss for the Tennessee Titans. I know that when I asked Sean about it, because it happened one of the nights we were recording the fast break, he was like, yeah, who cares? Doesn't matter. Derrick Henry is a starting running back anyways. He's like, DeMarco Murray ain't what he used to be when he was with Dallas. And another reason why I'm kind of in that camp that the DeMarco Murray retirement doesn't hurt that much. You sign Dion Lewis in the offseason. You go ahead and you draft a guy, Wadley, out of Iowa, who I think is going to be a really good running back at the next level. Might not be your starting running back, but he can help you out in certain run situations and be a solid contributor to your rushing attack. Another interesting pickup that they had, you talked about defense, interesting pickup on the defensive side of the ball. They bring in another former New England Patriot. They bring in Malcolm Butler to be cornerback on the other side of the football. And I look at this team and what they kind of have. They have a good mix to me of young and old players. They're veterans. They have Logan Ryan on that defense. They've got Cyphrin, who used to be with Jacksonville. You get Malcolm Butler, who used to be with New England. You get Dion Lewis, who used to be with New England. But you have those young players. Marcus Mariota, still young. Derrick Henry, still young. Corey Davis, still young. You bring in a veteran wide receiver in free agency. You didn't draft him. It was free agency in 2016 with Rashard Matthews. There's a good mix here. My whole question is, this was a team that was 9-7 last year, so they weren't blowing the doors off of anything. And to me, I feel like this team, the only reason I have them taking a minor step back and not getting to 9 wins this year is because of that new coaching staff putting in and implementing their system this year. I don't know if they're going to translate to wins right away with the Vrabel regime in Tennessee.
The biggest concern for me, coaching-wise, is the fact that those Bill Belichick type of coaches, those New England coaches, they just don't work when they leave. And when, having them in these head coaching positions, it's exciting. Everybody gets excited about it. But Vrabel was one of those ones where I really looked at it and I didn't see it. I didn't understand it. The team really...
It was kind of like,
yeah, right?
All right.
The team last year, it wasn't something where I was like, this is a bad deal. But this is a bad move.
Wasn't expecting that.
Right. And I do think that I was expecting them to kind of go and say, well, the thing that really hurt us last year, I believe, was this offense was handcuffed to bad play calls, to bad coaching. And you kind of fix that by going out and getting a great offensive mind coach or something like that. Sure, that would have made sense to me.
Yeah.
They obviously went the direction they went, and I'm not going to hold that against them. Pretty much anybody who you wanted a little bit more out of, they didn't give you quite enough. And I think that's something that's going to get fixed. I do wonder with the coaching staff, but this offense has to be better. The defense certainly is going to be better as well. So you just start improving things. You start getting more yards. You start having better game plans. It's certainly going to be a better team this year than it just was last year. And last year they were a 9-7 playoff team.
This year, to me, they're going to have a tougher schedule in my mind. And the one thing I had to look up is they did split with they beat Jacksonville twice last year. I don't think that happens again. I want to basically do this with their schedule. I want to list you off 10 games. You tell me if I'm crazy for saying that they can go 0-10 in all of these games.
Okay.
Both Jacksonville games, so home and away. Home against the Eagles, home against the Ravens, at the Chargers, at the Cowboys, home against the Patriots. I almost said Titans. Well, of course they'd be home. Home against the Patriots. The road games between the Colts and Texans, and then the home game against the Redskins.
Well, I certainly think that it's not surprising to say that they could easily split the division 3-3 because it's a good division. It is, especially with Andrew Luck coming back. It's a good division. Can win your home games, lose all your road games, and they play tough teams. Like you mentioned the Eagles, you mentioned the Chargers, the Patriots. They play some tough teams, but I don't think it's unrealistic to say that they split with the Jaguars because the Jaguars, they surprised everybody last year, but they certainly have some flaws on that team as well. And I'm going to trust Marcus Mariota to go out and win me a game. I'm not going to trust Blake Bortles to do that same thing. So really with that...
But the defense is a lot tougher for Jacksonville.
Sure, but this defense should be better for Tennessee as well. So, you look at some of this, and really it's going to come down to some of those games where they really have to win. They have the teams that they should beat. They should beat the Jets, sure. People are going to say they should beat the Dolphins.
They should beat the Bills.
Should beat the Bills. But there's those games like the Ravens, the Chargers, the Cowboys. Those are the ones where they really...
Even the Giants being at New York.
But I'm still going to say that people are probably going to say they should beat the Giants. I don't really 100% agree because I think the Giants will be better this year, but they're not going to be amazing. But those kind of games where it's in between, they really need to win those up in the air type of games. And the Ravens are going to be a good team. The Chargers are going to be a good team. These are good teams out there, but what I really want to see out of the Titans, and I'm not expecting, 4,500 yards out of a guy like Marcus Mariota, but I want to see Marcus Mariota go out there with command of this offense and everybody to just be better, get more yards, throw more touchdowns. And like I said, part of it was the fact that this offense was just handcuffed by, honestly, just crappy coaching. Really is what it comes down to. But Mariota, to me, he had that really nice 2016 season, but those two bookends, this past season and the rookie year, were nothing phenomenal. And part of it was rookie year, he was out for, 4 games that he was hurt for, and he's been hurt at least one game every year. But I just want to see more out of Mariota. Get more yards, throw more touchdowns. Let's look at 2016 and let's expand upon that. Because, Derrick Henry is a good running back, but he's not Le'Veon Bell. He's not going to go out there and get you almost 1,300 yards all on his own. This offense all needs to be better, and I really think that this was the right move because last year's offense, I said that getting to winning a playoff game was one of the worst things that could happen to the Titans. Because they might be stuck with the bad offense that they had because of the coaches.
My biggest question this year, I'd like to kind of take my question that I asked you about the 10 games who they could beat of those to basically put it simple, I said this in one of the AFC North teams. I think it was the Ravens, I believe, when Sean and I did that division. Same thing is true for the Titans. The most important thing that will determine whether or not the Titans are battling for a playoff spot again, or if they're a 7-9, 6-10 team, is how they do against teams with winning records. Right now, when I look at it, when I look at my record for the Titans, 0-6 against winning teams. Eagles, Chargers, Cowboys, Patriots, and both Jaguar games. Every winning opponent that they play, 0-6 against. Against losing, then you go 6-4, you win those games. That, to me, is the big thing. Can you beat the Jacksonvilles like you did last year twice? Can you beat the Eagles? Can you beat the Cowboys? Not going to say can you beat the Patriots. You'll probably lose that game. There's not many teams that are going to beat, maybe 2 or 3, beat the Patriots this year. Mm-hmm. But can you get wins, especially those home games? Eagles you have at home. You get the Jaguars once at home.
Upset one of these teams, yeah.
Like, I didn't even mention Ravens and Redskins. I have them right now maybe around 8-8, not winnable, like winning record teams, so they don't fall into it. Can you get a win and sneak one of those? Those are 2 home games. So to me, it depends. How are you going to play? Basically, how are you going to play against 500 and above teams?
Here's what scares me is the fact that last year's, and I'm saying this with a, with an asterisk next to it, that Delaney Walker was your leading receiver last year of 800 some yards.
Yeah.
Rashad Matthews had like 600, I think. Corey Davis had like 300 plus.
And you drafted Corey Davis to be your main guy?
Yeah, this was bad passing the ball. And like I said, this offense in general was just bad. Coaching is a huge part of that. That's gone. I want to see what Matt LaFleur can do, how he can infuse some of that high-flying, we score a shit ton of points here in L.A. offense for the Rams into Tennessee. That's what Tennessee needs. That's what people have wanted out of Tennessee. And, I don't think they have bad receivers. I don't think they have a bad running back. But I don't necessarily see that one guy who is that, look, there's Antonio Brown, or sticking with the Steelers, there's Le'Veon Bell, there's Fournette. I want to see that. And I know Derrick Henry isn't that type of guy. That's why DeMarco Murray being gone is a little bit of a loss. Not a huge loss, but it is a loss. They need somebody like Corey Davis to step up and say, no, I will be that guy. I will be the guy who really goes out there and dominates and leads this offense, who becomes Marcus Mariota, not just needing a safety blanket. This is the guy who Marcus Mariota can lean on so he can build upon that 2016 season where things sophomore year looked like they were going in the correct direction, where then we took a step back for year 3, and now year 4 we really kind of need to move in that correct direction, because if things keep being kind of pedestrian, and I'm not saying that Marcus Mariota is out of here. Nobody get mad at me for saying that.
Let me go. Can I go there for a second?
Yeah, sure. If we get to 4 years and it's still pedestrian, there will be people that are saying what you're, I think, about to say.
Well, no, I wasn't going to say let's get him out of town. I was going to say this. You look at the years 3-13, 9-7, 9-7. Let's say this year. Let's say it's below 9-7. It's between 9-7 and 6-10. Then next year, it's another like 8-8, 9-7 team. Marcus Mariota's contract's up. Are there then people that say, hey, why are we going to re-sign this guy? Why would he be worth the money when we can't win with him? And the thing that I think is interesting, I don't think this is something that's like, oh, he's going to push him out of town. But I think it's right now just if you're going through your cliff notes, you're like, I'm flagging this for later. I'm putting a flag on this page. I'm going to come back to it. They drafted Luke Falk in the draft, and he was a guy to me.
I'm not that worried about Luke Falk.
I expected a team like the Patriots to pick up, a team where it's like, we don't need a quarterback immediately right away, but he's a guy we could develop into something if we have to get rid of, or if Tom Brady retired with the Patriots. that to me could be one where it's like, hey, maybe they drafted Luke Falk this year knowing well that, hey, if we're pedestrian these next 2 years and we have to let Mariota go because we won't want to pay him, we could develop Luke Falk these next 2 years to be the starter if we get to.
If this year is not good or Mariota gets hurt or something like that, and it's looking like, I don't know if we've got the guy.
Too. If he gets injured again, it's how can you pay a guy who's been injured every year?
I expect that if it's getting to this point where, for whatever reason, they're thinking, I don't know if this is the guy, they'll draft somebody higher. I can't expect that they're going to go.
Also depends on where they are in the draft.
Well, yeah.
If they're a team that goes 9-7 again,
we've seen a lot of teams make moves for their quarterbacks in recent years.
True,
and it's not the Robert Griffin III kind of trade where everyone laughed about it.
Chiefs being one that made the playoffs but made the move for Mahomes.
Exactly. So a lot of teams being willing to move. I mean, just 2 years ago, literally all 3 teams that drafted a quarterback in the first round made a trade in order to do so. So it's totally possible. And like I said, I'm not willing to go there yet. I'm just saying that this offense, to avoid being in that situation, it needs to not be this just kind of middle of the road type of offense. And they bring in LaFleur to be the offensive coordinator for a reason, because they saw what was able to happen with Jared Goff. If Jared Goff, who had a bad rookie, 4 games, can move into having an amazing second year in the NFL, if you can get that out of Marcus Mariota, and I'm not saying he needs to go out there and, like I said, throw 4,500 yards, but just get him to that next level. Get him out there throwing touchdowns to these receivers. Corey Davis was like 300 yards, no touchdowns last year. That is a joke. He needs to be able to get more. And the excitement about the Tennessee Titans is that people were excited about them last year, but that wasn't the year. This next year is just a whole nother year of experience. Around a lot of these young guys. They've got a very strong offensive line. The defense is good. They have the potential to be that surprise kind of underdog team. They can make it happen. We just need to see more out of this team. And the thing that really surprises a lot of people is, I think we all expected Marcus Mariota to come into the NFL and just run away with it. Really be like a Deshaun Watson. Come in rookie year and just dominate people. Be like Andrew Luck. Push your team into the playoffs every year, because that's how talented you are coming into the NFL, no questions about it. But Jameis Winston and Marcus Mariota, who came in together, neither one has been that guy to really push their team to that next level. We're getting to that point where it's not going to be that far down the line if neither one of these guys takes a huge step forward, that on our podcast we're having the conversation, is it time to move on?
I'm going to say this year, I see the Titans being, at best, they're 9-7 again. But realistically, I see them as a 6-win, 7-win team. 6-10, 7-9. And the reason why I say that is they play a lot of teams this year. At least 6 of them will have winning records. There are 4 to me. So there's a possible 10 that could have winning records. But there are basically 6 for sure that will have winning records. And let's be completely honest. Of those teams, Eagles will be in a playoff hunt. Patriots will be a playoff team. Cowboys will be in a playoff hunt. I could see the Cowboys being the Lions of last year. Oh, they finished 10-6. Still didn't get a wild card because they finished behind the Eagles and couldn't get into the wild card in that tough NFC. And then obviously Jacksonville, they're going to be in the playoffs this year, I believe. I just look at last year and it's like, yeah, you went 9-7, yeah, you made the playoffs, but if things change a little bit, like look at your Texan games. Deshaun Watson plays game 1, you lose 57-14. He doesn't play game 2, you win 24-13. I'm looking at that going, if Deshaun Watson's healthy, you lose both of those games. Yeah. I don't see the Titans winning both Jaguar games this year. I see them maybe winning one, maybe losing both. I don't see them winning both of those. And with Andrew Luck, I could see them splitting with the Colts, like 3-3. If they went 3-3 in the division last year, that meant even though I said they would lose to Deshaun Watson again, I'll still give them the win in the second one. That's 7 wins. You lose to Deshaun Watson that second time, that's 6 wins. That's what I think this season will be like, that last season just had those chips fall in the right place.
Yeah, I kind of had trouble getting them over 9 wins when you really look at it as well. And, and I think that's okay for the Tennessee Titans as long as they get some progress with this, new coaching staff. But that's really what it comes down to. If you're a Tennessee Titans fan, you have to see offensive progress.
And also the thing I'll throw in there is those both Jacksonville games from last year, Blake Bortles played like shit, and Leonard Fournette did not do anything on the ground. And you could say Titan fans that, we did a great job shutting down that Jaguar offense. Maybe, but at the same time, it's Leonard Fournette gets going. Those games, especially that second one, Week 17, completely different game.
Sure, but Tennessee's defense is good. I'm not going to try and discount or doubt Tennessee's defense. It's solid. You
do add Malcolm Butler, that is a plus. It's not a negative.
Exactly. I mean, they've got the right pieces. They've got Vrabel there. He can make a difference. He can push that part forward. LaFleur should hopefully be good on the offensive side in it. I think he's going to have a lot of control over this offense, and they've got what they need. They just need to actually make it happen on the field.
Well, this is where you guys come in. Let us know what you think down below in that comment section. I feel like out of all the teams, this could be the one I get the most hate for because I am probably the lowest on the Titans of all of the AFC South teams. But this is where you guys come in. Let us know what you think down below in that comment section. And Mark, we finally get to the last team of the podcast. This was the team that came so close to going to the Super Bowl in Minnesota. It was almost the Philadelphia Eagles. I almost said Minnesota Vikings. That wasn't true. We were nowhere close. The Philadelphia Eagles against the Jacksonville Jaguars. Some would say, Ricky Widmer would say, that the Jaguars were screwed out of that win, WWE style, because the refs were paid off. Some would say that. I might be one of them, that the refs screwed them on a few calls in that game, mainly that pass interference call that I will still not let go. But this team is poised, I will say, to make it back to the playoffs, win this division. The thing I want to ask you, this might be a little kind of jumping the gun, but I want to ask you, just let's not beat around the bush. How far is this team going to go this year? Is a Super Bowl bid a realistic expectation for the Jaguars in 2018?
I don't know. It's a tough one to say because the defense is definitely really good, and Blake Bortles basically accepted his role of, I just got to not mess up because I've got Leonard Fournette here, and that's making things really
Sometimes
really nice
it's all you need. Trent Dilfer didn't blow him out of the water.
Yeah, I mean, sure, there's less of those kind of quarterbacks, especially in the modern era, but I mean,
Trent Dilfer had a phenomenal defense with that Ravens team.
The thing that worries me most, I would say, with Jacksonville is, one, it's not a surprise anymore. Everybody knows you're coming now. But two, you lost some injured wide receivers, but they were still some really good, talented wide receivers. And I know that Blake Bortles isn't going to throw it all over everybody. This is a ride and die with Leonard Fournette in the defense. But I look at the receivers, and I'm not that excited about Moncrief or
Marquise Lee.
Marquise Lee. I like Austin Seferian-Jenkins, but, I mean, you got a bunch of guys who are just kind of okay receivers. So when you need to go out there and win a game, I don't know if I believe that it can happen. So, fortunately, that defense is going to keep them in all these games, and they don't really need to worry about that too much. But that's my number one fear with the Jacksonville Jaguars. I for sure think that they can get back to the AFC Championship game. I just don't know if they're going to be able to go against a high-powered, once again, the New England Patriots, but even the Pittsburgh Steelers, if they can get it together, because they stumble. They're their own worst enemy. They stumble too much. I think they have trouble against these high-powered teams.
Do not get tangled up in the wide receivers. And I get what you're saying. Allen Robinson, was a really good wide receiver for the Jaguars. Allen Hurns, the two Allens, were really good for the Jaguars. But when you look at it in the end, this Jaguar team went to the AFC title game.
They did.
Without either of them. So really...
surprising the world.
The way that I'm looking at it is based off of what I saw last year, and I know it was only 1 year, but based off of last year, they didn't have Allen and Allen last year. What makes someone think that this team can't do the same thing that they did last year just because they lost those two?
Sure.
And to me, with the wide receivers, the thing that I really like is, Moncrief and Lee, do they really blow the door off the hinges for me? No. But they are coming back. They know this system. A guy I'm really excited for is the rookie they drafted, G.J. Chark, out of LSU. This guy's got speed. This guy could end up developing into a good weapon for them this year and could be a sneaky target for them because teams will be like, oh, we got to cover Marquise Lee. We got to cover Moncrief. And he could find some mismatches and exploit defenses with his speed in this next level, the linebackers and cornerbacks. Austin Seferian-Jenkins, I don't think I'm as high on him as you are. To me, he's just been he's all right in the NFL. Wasn't what he was in college in my mind. To me, this offense is easy. Blake Bortles doesn't make mistakes. Leonard Fournette makes this offense go. As long as the run game is solid, Blake Bortles doesn't turn over the ball, this offense will be fine. On defense, you're bringing back a lot of the familiar faces. You don't lose a lot. You add some little pieces like Tavion Bryant, who some were high on coming into the NFL draft out of Florida. You bring in a third-round pick, Ronnie Harrison, the safety coming in out of college. You get some key defensive guys. For me this year for Jacksonville, it all comes down to I am jumping the gun for sure. This team is going to win this division. This team is going to be in the playoffs. And my main question is just one thing in these playoffs. Can they beat the Patriots? That's the only question I have for this team. Because as we saw last year, they can beat the Steelers. They have no problem beating the Steelers.
I wouldn't say no problem. I mean, they beat the Steelers, but they beat the Steelers 45-42.
It was a thrilling game, but I would say that
the regular season game, sure, they won by quite a bit, but that was a different Pittsburgh team.
I have more confidence in the Jaguars winning a playoff game against the Steelers than I do the Steelers winning a game against the Jaguars. The only question for me is whether it's the AFC Championship game, whether it's the second round, when this team goes up against the Patriots, because to me, if this team wants to go to the Super Bowl, the way I see it, they're going to have to play either the Steelers or the Patriots in the second round. They're going to have to play the other one in the AFC title game. I have confidence they can get through the Steelers. Can they get through the Patriots to get to the Super Bowl?
So here's the thing with the Jacksonville Jaguars is I do think they're a really good team. I do think they have a very good chance of winning this division again. Especially if Deshaun Watson doesn't come out and light the world on fire again or gets hurt or something like that. They easily can win again. So that being said, Leonard Fournette faced 8 men in the box more than any other running back out there. So there's that he has to deal with. You don't have either one of your top two wide receivers, which I understand they were hurt last year. But
really, if we're looking last year, your top two wide receivers, yardage-wise, are Cole and Lee, not Hearns and Robinson.
I mean, Robinson didn't play. Hearns played about half the season.
Exactly. So to me, I'm not really, when you say that's 1 and 2, they didn't have them last year.
Yeah, so let's be honest. Who's the number one receiver in Pittsburgh?
Coming into Antonio Brown.
Doesn't matter if he's healthy or not. He's the number one wide receiver.
But if he was like, if they lost him and he didn't play the year before, all I'm saying is,
if in the two Allens were on this roster right now, they would be 1 and 2.
Exactly. But what I'm saying is, based off of last year, they didn't play anyways. So really, to me, Cole and Lee are your 1 and 2.
And was this offense passing game good last year?
It wasn't phenomenal, but it got the like that with the run game. This offense doesn't need to blow the top off or take the top off the defense.
But when they don't have that opportunity, Leonard Fournette, like I said, 8 in the box more than any other running back last year. So you have that, plus the fact that now they know there's not a true reliable number one wide receiver out there. So that goes up even further. And that could potentially mean that Blake Bortles surprises people and maybe he performs better and he's going to get that, really take advantage of that. Sure, that's possible. So you have that coming forward. You don't have the surprise this year. We've seen this offense now. Blake Bortles understands his role now, which is, I just got to not mess up. That's something that kind of scares me, that there's not a reliable, great weapon for him to take advantage of, which is just going to be that people know the way to beat them is going to be holding Leonard Fournette to basically under 100 yards. Essentially, if you can get him on under 100 yards, you're probably going to be able to take advantage of this team because Blake Bortles isn't going to beat you. Now, the flip side of that, of course, is going to be the fact that in the regular season, it doesn't necessarily matter. You're going to win enough games to where you're going to the playoffs. The problem, pretty much similar to what you said, is when you're going to play these teams that are really strong, they got high-powered offenses, that's when you're going to have some trouble that you're going to run into. And Saxonville can get to quarterbacks, sure, that's going to help. But all it really is going to take is teams to stop your offense, which we saw enough last year to know that it's possible with stopping Leonard Fournette, with knowing that Blake Bortles isn't going to beat you. And then offensively, just quick game. Keep it fast. Get the ball out of your hands really quickly, and then you can beat the Jacksonville Jaguars.
Out of last year, and I know that, the Steelers they didn't play the Patriots in the regular season, they played the Steelers. Last year, when I look at high-powered offenses that they played last year, I'll say the Steelers because of the Killer Bees. That defense only let the Steelers put 9 points on them in Pittsburgh.
Until the postseason when they gave up 42.
I'm going to get to the postseason, but in the regular season, the Steelers only put 9 up on them.
Yeah.
The Rams, the Jaguars lost that game, but 27 points is not bad. That is like, all right, most teams are like, if we can keep it 27-21, we could win this game. Like 27 might be getting on the fringe of like, okay, one more and then, all right, you kind of let them score a lot of points. Rams being a high-powered offense, so I would say. You have the Chargers, only 20 points. I'll go down. The only other team to score, Jimmy Garoppolo and the 49ers got 44 on you. Yep. That was kind of a surprise. But then, the other flip side of it is you get games like the Jets and the Titans were 23-20,
or good
15-10. Last year. The main Achilles heel for this team, and this is where the offensive question comes in, is if an opposing defense can shut down Leonard Fournette, can Blake Bortles be the guy to win the game? Can he? Because, you look at his stats, I'm just looking touchdown to interception.
Yeah.
In most of the losses, in every loss, 1-2 had more interceptions. 1-1 was even, but that was that close Jet game. It's like, come on, if you get one more touchdown, you win that game. Then you've got the Ram game, 1 touchdown, 1 interception. You don't want to see your quarterback only with 1 touchdown. The loss against the Cardinals, no touchdowns, 1 INT. And then the final 2 losses on the year, 2 touchdowns, 3 INTs against San Fran, no touchdowns, 2 interceptions against the Titans.
You laid it out perfectly for me. They didn't really play that many strong offenses last year. They did do well against strong offenses because this is a great defense. This is one of the best defenses in the NFL. There's no doubt about that. Defense
is going to carry this team.
The problem that they have is it's all on Leonard Fournette. It's all on him. And he was a rookie last year. If teams have figured out how to stop him, and it doesn't take that many teams to figure out how to stop them to do enough for the Jaguars to be in a spot where they're not the number 1 seed, so they don't get home field advantage, and now they're playing on the road, which always is a disadvantage in the playoffs. You know, it's just those type of things. Without a doubt, like I said, Jacksonville is getting to the playoffs, but they're going to take a step back from last year. They're not going to be as good as last year. And
do you mean just step back in general, or like actual win-losses step back? Because they were a 10-6 team last year.
No, I'm not necessarily caring about the wins and losses. Okay. I'm just saying the team in general, I think is going to take a step back. I still, honestly, if I was going to guess right now, I'd say they're probably a 10-6 team again.
Okay.
This year. That's where I have them at, with maybe 11-5 if one of these games goes the other direction. But, you know, for the Jacksonville Jaguars, the regular season to me doesn't matter. I know you're going to get into the playoffs. I'm not worried about that. It's really when you get there that it starts to make me wonder.
The thing that matters about the regular season to me is there are a few games that I want to see you step up in. Week 2, when the Patriots come to Jacksonville, you got to step up in that one. Like, if you could steal a win from the Patriots in that game, that's going to help you in the AFC standings. Week 11, when the Steelers come to town, I'm going to circle that. That's a must-win game, too. You get that win, that's going to help you in the playoff standings. Then the other games I look at are more so like at Dallas, home against the Eagles. What are you going to do against those really good teams? Like the Eagles, we expect to be in the playoffs again. The Cowboys, I would say some think they're going to be second in that division. The Giants, depending on what we see, I only think the Jaguars are going to beat the Giants week 1 because I don't know what to expect from that Giant team right away week 1. But, like, this is a Jaguar team that I think, like, I was saying, like, 8-8, 8-8, 6-10. No, this one, like, at the very worst, you're 10-6 again, winning the division. At the best, this is like a 12-4, 13-3 team. And they're 13-3 if they get wins over the Patriots, if they beat the Steelers in the regular season, and they beat like a Cowboy team.
Yeah, it's a narrow window for them. And like I said, you know, it all is going to come down to the playoffs. And what scares me is they don't face as many strong defenses as their defense is. But when I'm looking at teams that I think are probably going to be in the playoffs, I'm looking at teams like the Patriots, like the Chargers, like possibly the Texans, assuming Deshaun Watson's still going to be healthy, the Ravens, the Steelers, the Titans might squeeze their way in there. You know, the majority of those teams I just mentioned are high-powered offense kind of teams, which most of them, not all of them, most of them have above-average defenses too. So they're going to be able to go up against you. You know, I would be scared against teams like, of course, the Steelers, the Ravens, the Chargers, because of, actually the Texans, throw them in there too, because of their defensive fronts and what that can put up against you. Because, like I said, the key to beating Jacksonville is stop Leonard Fournette. If you stop him, dare Blake Bortles to throw the ball on you. And will he be able to do it a time or two? Yeah, sure. He'll probably be able to surprise a few teams. But overall, based on what we've seen, I don't expect it. And I hate to be that this is such a down segment for the Jacksonville Jaguars, but
for you,
when we're sitting there coming in saying you're in the playoffs, congratulations, let's move forward. Well, and it just that's where we're at for me.
To me, another interesting thing that I think this team needs to change from last year is the end of the year. I don't want to say killed the team because they still went to the AFC Championship game, but they kind of sputtered at the end of the year. Like, they were coming off that Browns game week 11. I know it was a 19-7 game, and you're like, whoa, that's kind of close for Jaguars-Browns.
With an 0-16 team.
But, I mean, that's a game where they were, that's 10 games into the season, 3 losses, so they're, 7-3 if my math is correct? 7-3 after that one. And then it's like the last 6 games, you go 500 to finish 10-6. And let's be honest, that Arizona game should have been a win. Blake Bortles gets 1 touchdown. They win that game. That Tennessee game should have been a win. This team probably should have been 12-4 last year. Let's be completely honest. Let's tack on that Jet game as well. That should have been a win if Blake Bortles gets one more touchdown. I hate to put it all on Blake Bortles, but when you only get one touchdown in games, I'm gonna put it on you. That's what? Arizona, Tennessee, the Jets. That's 3 games. This team should have been, let's be honest, 13-3 last year. Now I know last year is said and done. It's over. But the thing that I think coming in that this team can kind of hang their hat on is they're a good defensive team. They have pieces on offense. To me, the biggest thing is Blake Bortles. Is he going to be the quarterback that, and I know it's easy to say, oh, well, because like I said earlier, as long as he doesn't make mistakes, they'll be fine. He's got to get into the end zone a couple times. If Leonard Fournette, if it isn't going in the run game, you need to supplement that. You need to put the team on your back almost and say, all right, we got to find a different way to get into the end zone. I know that's quarterback working with coaches to find the game plan, but the thing I kind of think is a little bit of a confidence boost for this team is how they ended the year. And I know Jaguar fans, but Ricky, we lost. How can we end it on a positive note when we lost? You went into Pittsburgh. Yeah, some fans will say, oh, you should have lost that Buffalo game. Like, they almost Jaguared it in that first wild card game where it was like the Arizona game, the Jet game, the Titan game, the Brown game, where it's like, you should be winning this game.
That Bills-Jaguars game was extremely painful to watch.
But, like, after that, they turned a switch. And I know 45-42, that was the only reason that game was close, because towards the end of the game, the Big Ben started to go, and it was just match for match at the end of that. It's like a good tennis match when they're just volleying it back and forth. That's what it was late in that one. But that Jaguar defense came up huge to win them that game. Then you go into New England, and let's be completely honest. Not only, I'm going to just take the thing we can control, not only do you hold Tom Brady to 10 first half points and 24 points overall, that team was, let's be completely honest, they were one bad pass interference call from possibly winning that game. So for me, the Jaguars, they're not a team where it's like, yeah, for sure, book them in the Super Bowl. But I think it's time this year to say, instead of saying like, oh yeah, Steelers and Patriots are going to be the two that we expect, I think it's time to add the Jaguars into that, to where the AFC is the Patriots, Steelers, and Jaguars are automatically in, automatically going to fight, and then it's the rest.
I don't think there's a single person out there that's disagreeing with you. Everybody is saying that the Patriots, the Steelers, and the Jaguars are one of the 3 teams that are going to be in there. But it's just a matter of which one of those teams isn't going to be in the AFC Championship game. But I just don't want it to be like, I think that the Jaguars deserve the respect of, they could go into a playoff match no matter where it is, home or away, with either the Steelers and the Patriots and win a playoff game against either of those teams. I mean, I think it's possible, sure, but I don't necessarily. My hang up is still going to be, we can rave about Ramsey, we can rave about the defense. They're amazing. We can talk about Leonard Fournette's rookie season. It was fantastic. But it was just 1 year. It could change for sure. But I'm going to give him the credit because I really like Leonard Fournette. So we can say that those things are good, but those things are beatable. How many teams in the modern era do go into the Super Bowl and win a Super Bowl with a great defense and a good running back and a not good quarterback? I mean, there's about 2. The only one I could possibly think of is that Ravens team, but I can't remember. I was going to say there's about 2, and it's the Ravens both times. Yeah. So, it's not, and not that every quarterback that goes and wins a Super Bowl is Tom Brady, but the majority of the time, if you're going to win one of these games, it's because you're a really good quarterback. You can maybe throw the Seahawks in there too. I look up that roster from the 2000 Ravens that they went 12-4 that year. Trent Dilfer Ravens, and won the Super Bowl that year.
just their offense. Like they had, and he was a rookie this year. Jamal Lewis, rookie year, had just almost 1,400 yards on the ground for that team and almost 300 yards through the air. Shannon Sharp at tight end. Quarterback obviously was Trent Dilfer, but then it's like you have that stacked defense as well, led by Ray Lewis. Yeah. So it's like that's the team, that's the model that I think of.
And there's no reason why the Jaguars can't be the next team to do something like that for sure. But really, what it comes down to for me is just that the Jaguars are better than almost every other team in the AFC, 100%. But we know how to beat the Jacksonville Jaguars. It's just a matter of executing it. You know, that's really what it comes down to. If a team can execute it, they'll be fine. And I know that people are going to say, thanks, John Madden. But, I mean, boom! There's a difference between how do you beat Tom Brady and how do you beat the Jacksonville Jaguars.
And that's why the one thing I will say for Jacksonville, I want to and I will put pressure on Blake Bortles this year. Like, yeah,
we put pressure on Blake Bortles for years.
I know, but like this is the 1 year where it's like, all right, Blake, you got a team. Like those teams before were not real teams. You finally have a defense that can walk into any game against any offense and give them a run for their money. I don't want to see you going one touchdown, one interception. Like there's a difference between not turning over the ball and just being safe. Last year was him just being safe. Yeah, I know he finished 21 touchdowns to 13 INTs, the least interceptions he had in his career, but also the least amount of touchdowns that he's had since his rookie year when he went 11-17 in how many games did he play? 13 games that year? That 3-10 while he was the starter in those 13, technically played 14, but he didn't start one. Every other year, like he had 35 against in 2015. I'm not asking for 35, but I don't want to see games where it's one touchdown, one INT. That's going to drive me crazy if I'm a Jaguar fan.
When you're just playing it safe, you get a Tyrod Taylor type of situation where your team gets sick of you. It doesn't matter that you're doing well. It doesn't matter if you get us to the playoffs. If you're still,
we've had that discussion.
If you're just
times.
about 3,000 yards, 16, 17, 18 to 20 touchdowns and not very many interceptions, great. But it doesn't do much for us if we're not winning games. And now Tyrod would have been more successful with a Jacksonville type of defense and a running back like Leonard Fournette, sure. But it just comes down to this. If they had just a little bit better passing game, and I'm not just putting on Blake Bortles, it's the receivers as well. If that passing game's a little bit better, we're looking at this team like many people are, wanting to. I'm saying this mostly for your sake, Ricky.
Yeah.
The Vikings. Like people want to say about the Vikings and going, wow, that's an absolutely complete team. And I would actually say that if you just had that better passing game, without a doubt, everyone's going to agree the Jacksonville Jaguars are a more complete team than the Minnesota Vikings are.
The quarterbacks are different. And
it just needs to be a little bit better of a passing game.
And I say the quarterbacks are different. I don't say it has to be a better passing game. I just say the quarterbacks are different. Whereas Blake Bortles, it's show me you can do something. Like it's poking the guy going, do something. Score a touchdown for Jesus Christ's sake. Whereas the Vikings, I think that this year with our quarterback is basically, all right, Kirk, we're giving you the best team that you've ever had.
Sure.
Show us what you got.
But I would say that what I'm saying with the complete team, people are looking at the Vikings saying there's a complete team. Yeah. They're looking at the Jacksonville saying if they just had a better quarterback, it'd be a complete team. But the Jacksonville Jaguars would be more of a complete team with that better quarterback because they've got the better offensive line.
And the last thing I'll say is don't expect Blake Bortles to go anywhere anytime soon because he did sign that extension to where he's not a free agent until 2021.
And I don't see a line of teams, lining up for Blake Bortles unless he's willing to be a backup or compete for a job.
Well, this is where you guys come in. Let us know what you guys think down below in that comment section about the Jaguars. We did good, Mark, until this one went a little bit too long. They're looking at the logo on YouTube, and everyone on podcast services around the world are like, great, now you know what we deal with when we listen to the podcast on audio and not looking at Mark and Ricky's beautiful faces. But let us know what you guys think down below in the comment section. I want to thank you guys for listening. Housekeeping here at the end. Make sure to check out patreon.com/mostvaluablepodcast. That's how you help out the channel more so than watching, liking, subscribing, listening on podcast services around the world. Make sure to check out our store. Link down below in the description. Also at mostvaluablepodcast.com. That's where you can get our MVP t-shirt and help support the channel as well. Mostvaluablepodcast.com is where you can also catch MVP each and every day. Last but not least, if you are on Apple Podcasts, you do have iTunes, make sure to find the Onside Kick, give it a 5-star rating, and let us know why you like listening to the podcast each and every week. Thank you guys for watching on YouTube, even though you're looking at our logo right now. Thank you guys for listening on podcast services around the world. And as always, have a good day, everybody.